The moment everything tilted was not loud. No shouting. No plates crashing. It happened at the register, in plain sight, with customers waiting and staff watching. Money went in. Money went out. And the numbers stopped lining up. Sumit stood there, looking at the drawer, doing the math in his head, and realizing the truth was worse than a slow day. Cash was bleeding. Not missing once. Missing again and again. That was the second where a calf problem crossed into marriage danger. Jenny stood behind the counter, trying to move things along, smiling through confusion, handing back change that did not match the bill. It was not chaos in the dramatic sense. It was quieter than that. The kind of quiet that scares people who understand money. A customer paid. Jenny hesitated. She counted again. Then she waved it off and gave more back. Another order went out without payment because the line felt awkward. Inventory walked out the door while the register told a softer story. Sumit watched, and in his face, there was shock mixed with a sinking realization. This was not a bad moment. This was a pattern forming in real time. People like to think business failure looks explosive. This did not. It looked polite. It looked uncomfortable. It looked like someone avoiding conflict, because conflict feels worse than loss. Every time Jenny hesitated, the line grew longer. Every time the line grew longer, pressure built. And every time pressure built, accuracy disappeared. Staff noticed. Customers noticed. The drawer noticed most of all. The money did not argue. It simply left. What hit Sumit hardest was not embarrassment. It was recognition. Recognition that trust had replaced structure. Recognition that love had filled a role discipline usually holds. He had put his faith in shared intention instead of shared systems. And standing there, watching numbers drift away, he saw the cost of that choice. This was not about rupees or dollars. This was about control. Or the lack of it. Jenny did not hide confusion. She said she struggled with the currency. She said it out loud. And that honesty felt disarming. But honesty does not balance a register. Good intentions do not close gaps. The drawer kept coming up short. Again and again. Each time, the excuse landed softer than the consequence. The staff learned fast. When Jenny ran the front, rules bent. When rules bent, customers learned what to ask for. Free food stopped being rare. Discounts stopped being planned. Everything turned flexible. And flexible pricing eats margins alive. Sumit had walked into this with hope. Real hope. This calf was supposed to quiet every voice that doubted them. It was proof. Proof to his family. Proof to the cameras. Proof to himself. Watching money slip away felt like watching proof dissolve. And worse, he could not stop it without crossing a line he feared crossing. Correcting a spouse in public carries weight. Taking control from a partner carries consequences. He hesitated. That hesitation cost money. And money does not wait. This was the first time their marriage faced a scoreboard. Feelings did not matter here. Intentions did not count. Only totals. Only receipts. Only what stayed at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, there was less than there should have been. Every time. What makes this moment sting is how small it looked. No villain energy. No screaming match. Just a steady drip of loss and the shared silence around it. Silence from Jenny because admitting confusion felt safer than confrontation. Silence from Sumit because protecting peace felt safer than correction. Between those two silences, the register emptied. People watching later saw a calf story. What unfolded in that moment was a relationship story. Who leads under pressure? Who adapts? Who learns? Who avoids? Who absorbs the cost? When money disappears, someone always pays. Sometimes it is a business. Sometimes it is pride. Sometimes it is trust. Sumit did not need spreadsheets to feel it. He felt it in his chest, that cold drop when realization lands. This problem would not fix itself. And fixing it would hurt someone, either the calf or the marriage. Standing there, staring at numbers that refused to behave, he understood this was no longer about a register. This was the first real test of how they handle responsibility together. And the question hanging in that quiet space was not about profit at all. It was about whether love without adjustment survives contact with reality. Before any of the numbers went sideways, the calf carried weight. Real weight. This was not a hobby or a side plan. This was the reset button. Jenny and Sumit had talked for years about standing on their own, away from family pressure, away from constant doubt. The calf was supposed to be the clean answer, a fresh start with coffee and snacks instead of arguments and explanations. Something visible, something concrete, something no one could argue with once the doors opened. For Sumit, it was proof of growth, proof he could build something without leaning on his parents, proof he was not stuck in the same cycle. For Jenny, it was independence with purpose, not waiting at home, not feeling like a guest in someone else's country. This was her space too, their space, equal partners. That idea mattered more than the menu. On camera, the setup looked hopeful. Smiles, soft laughs, a little nervous energy. The kind people get when they are about to try something new and want badly for it to work. Anyone who has ever opened a small business knows this feeling. You imagine the best days first. You picture regulars. You picture pride. You picture finally exhaling. You do not picture spreadsheets yet. You do not picture the drawer coming up short. You picture love pulling extra weight. There is something almost sweet about how people start businesses together. You hear phrases like, "We will figure it out. We will learn as we go. It will be fine once we get into a rhythm." Those words feel comforting. They sound supportive. They are also dangerous. Optimism works great for morale. It does not replace systems. Jenny and Sumit leaned hard on optimism. You could see it. They talked about the calf like it was a shared dream instead of a daily operation. That is normal at the start. People assume effort fills gaps. People assume kindness keeps customers loyal. People assume the rest will sort itself out. And sometimes it does. Sometimes it does not. The calf mattered because it was meant to end a long argument without words. His family questioned everything about their relationship: the age gap, the cultural gap, the pace, the choices. This calf was supposed to quiet all of that. You cannot argue with rent paid on time. You cannot argue with steady income. You cannot argue with something that works. That pressure sat quietly behind every cheerful moment. There was also pride wrapped up in it. Public pride. This was not happening off-screen. This was not private. Cameras were around. Neighbors were watching. Family was watching. Online chatter was waiting. When you open a business under that kind of spotlight, mistakes feel louder. Every success feels smaller because it feels expected. Every misstep feels amplified. The tone early on stayed light. There were jokes. There was laughter about learning curves. That is relatable. People love the idea of building something with someone they love. They love the image of teamwork. It feels romantic. Two people against the world. Coffee as the peace offering. Snacks as the olive branch. The calf was framed like a bridge between cultures and generations. What nobody wants to admit at the start is how fast romance fades when numbers enter the room. Cash does not care about intention. Inventory does not care about effort. Staff need pay whether vibes are good or not. Suppliers do not accept optimism as currency. The calf asked questions love does not answer. Still, in the beginning, optimism covered cracks. When something went wrong, it was brushed off as beginner stuff. When confusion showed up, it was treated like a phase. When stress appeared, it was softened with jokes. That approach works until repetition sets in. One mistake is learning. 5 mistakes start looking like a habit. This is where the expectation gap formed. The calf was meant to prove stability. Instead, it quietly demanded discipline. The dream required structure. The hope required follow-through. What felt like teamwork began asking for roles. Clear ones. And clarity has a way of exposing imbalance. Looking back, the signs were small and easy to excuse. That is why they lasted. Nobody woke up planning failure. Nobody walked in wanting loss. They walked in believing love could smooth rough edges long enough for success to catch up. That belief carried them through opening days. It carried them through smiles. It even carried them through early mistakes. But optimism, when left unchecked, turns into a blindfold. And once that blindfold slips, you see not only the problem in front of you, but every moment you chose not to look. The first signs did not look dramatic. They looked small, easy to brush off. A bill paid. Change counted twice, then counted again. A pause. A smile. Extra coins sliding back across the counter. Nobody yelled. Nobody complained. But a few eyes lingered a second longer than normal. Staff noticed. Customers noticed. The register kept its own memory. On screen, there were moments where Jenny struggled to land on the right amount. Not once, more than once. You could see her hesitate. You could see her trying to keep things moving because a line was forming. When the line forms, pressure rises. When pressure rises, precision drops. Instead of slowing things down, she sped things up. That choice mattered. Free food started slipping out in ways that felt casual. Someone unhappy with a wait time. Someone confused about a price. Someone familiar enough to joke with. The solution often became food instead of discussion. That keeps the moment friendly. It also trains behavior fast. People learn what works. If complaining gets you something, complaining spreads. Staff reactions stayed polite. Nobody rolled their eyes on camera. Nobody challenged her directly. They watched. They adjusted. They whispered later. Employees tend to feel the gap first because they see the same mistake repeat. They see inventory go out faster than sales explain. They feel the tension between wanting to help and not wanting to step out of line. This was not sabotage. It was discomfort management. Jenny appeared uncomfortable with money conflict, making someone wait, correcting someone, asking for the full amount again. Those moments feel small. They are also the backbone of any business. Avoiding them creates space where losses hide. What made this tricky was tone. Jenny did not act careless. She acted overwhelmed. That difference matters. Overwhelm invites sympathy. It makes people hesitate to push back. You do not want to pile on. So instead of correcting behavior, everyone works around it. And when everyone works around a problem, the problem settles in. There were scenes where change came back wrong and nobody corrected it. Not because they did not notice, because calling it out felt awkward. That awkwardness became expensive. A few coins here, a few bills there. Multiply that across a day. Multiply a day across weeks. Loss does not announce itself. It accumulates. Another crack appeared in consistency. Prices felt flexible. One customer paid one amount, another paid less for the same thing. That confuses trust. Customers talk. Word spreads. A place earns a reputation quickly. Fair or not, reputation sticks. Once people believe rules bend, they push. Sumit hovered near the counter at times, watching, listening, not intervening. That silence spoke. Silence can mean trust. Silence can mean avoidance. In this case, it looked like both. He wanted the calf to feel welcoming. He also did not want to undermine his wife. Those goals clashed. The clash showed up in the drawer. What stands out is how visible the issue was without being addressed directly. That is usually a sign nobody wants to be the bad guy. Nobody wants to say the thing that changes the mood. Nobody wants to admit this is not working yet. So everyone waits for improvement instead of demanding it. Free food became less about kindness and more about escape. Escape from counting. Escape from explaining. Escape from slowing down. Every time food went out unpaid, it solved a moment and created a future problem. Inventory does not reset because intentions were good. There was no malice here, no scheme, just repeated behavior left uncorrected. That is often how small businesses fail. Not through big mistakes, through small ones protected by politeness. The staff energy shifted subtly. Smiles stayed. But urgency crept in. When workers start watching the register more than customers, something feels off. When they whisper about totals, something feels off. They knew money was not lining up long before anyone said it out loud, and that unspoken knowledge sat heavy. Everyone felt it. Everyone avoided naming it, because naming it would force a change, and change would upset someone. In that quiet space, the calf kept operating. Orders kept flowing. Smiles kept landing. And beneath all of it sat a truth nobody wanted to say yet. At some point, confusion stopped looking temporary. It started repeating. Same pause. Same second count. Same wave through when things felt awkward. The register kept telling the same story even as days passed. When a mistake repeats, it stops being a fluke. It becomes a pattern. Patterns carry weight. Money confusion looks harmless on the surface. Coins look similar. Bills move fast. People wait. Pressure rises. But a business does not live in moments. It lives in totals. Every wrong return chips away at margin. Every free item erases planned profit. When confusion shows up once, training fixes it. When confusion shows up again, training feels optional. When it shows up daily, the business pays. Jenny spoke openly about struggling with local currency. That honesty mattered. It also froze action. When someone admits confusion, people soften. They do not push. They do not insist. They give space. Space feels kind. Space also lets errors keep breathing. The drawer did not get kinder because feelings were protected. Avoidance drove the cycle. Avoidance of confrontation with customers. Avoidance of slowing the line. Avoidance of being corrected in public. Avoidance of admitting the role was not a good fit yet. Avoidance keeps peace in the moment and steals it later. That trade rarely feels fair until the bill arrives. The psychology sits right there. People who dislike money conflict often default to generosity. Generosity feels moral. It feels warm. In a home, generosity builds bonds. In a business, generosity needs rules. Without rules, generosity turns random. Random generosity trains people to test limits. Limits not enforced disappear. Staff felt the cost before leadership did. They saw inventory drop faster than sales. They felt the awkwardness when customers expected deals. They noticed when totals did not line up at close. Each night ended with questions and no clean answers. When staff carry unanswered questions, morale dips. They stop trusting the process. Sumit stayed caught between roles. Husband, partner, manager, son. Each role pulled in a different direction. Correcting the register meant correcting Jenny. Correcting Jenny in front of staff risked humiliation. Waiting felt safer. Waiting also allowed loss to compound. Silence felt protective. Silence proved expensive. The tone inside the calf shifted from light learning to quiet concern. Laughter thinned. Smiles tightened. When the same mistake appears again, patience drains. People stop seeing growth and start seeing resistance. Not learning fast enough feels different than not wanting to learn at all. That difference changed how others interpreted Jenny's actions. Currency confusion stopped being about numbers and started being about responsibility. Learning local systems takes effort. Effort shows respect. Avoiding learning reads as refusal even when intent feels innocent. That perception matters in a family business, especially one tied to pride and reputation. Customers adapted quickly. Some paid what they felt was right. Some waited for Jenny to handle the register. Some complained lightly because it worked. That behavior spread without anyone advertising it. Businesses teach customers how to behave through what they tolerate. Tolerance sets the rule. Every day this continued. The hole widened, not dramatically, quietly. Loss built like interest. No single moment screamed crisis. The crisis formed through repetition. Repetition numbed urgency. Numbness delayed action. What made this phase dangerous was invisibility. Loss did not announce itself on camera. It hid in small exchanges, in rounded totals, in untracked sales, in inventory that left without a record. The calf looked open. It looked busy. It looked fine. Underneath, Numbers drifted. People outside saw effort. People inside saw strain. That gap kept widening. When problems stay visible only to those closest, they last longer. Outsiders assume stability. Insiders absorb stress. By the time concern replaced optimism, damage already existed. Fixing it would require admitting how long it went unchecked. That admission felt heavier than the loss itself. So the pattern stayed. Day after day, shift after shift. Quiet enough to ignore, loud enough to hurt. And somewhere during those early weeks, the truth settled in before anyone said it aloud. This had been happening longer than it should have. Sumit stood in the middle of it all, quieter than before. Not absent, not unaware, present and watching. He saw the drawer come up short. He heard staff questions trail off without answers. He felt tension rise in small ways. A longer pause at closing. A tighter look from someone counting inventory. He chose not to step in. Not yet. Trust guided him. Real trust. The kind built over years of defending a relationship against outside pressure. He trusted Jenny's heart. He trusted effort would catch up. He trusted time would smooth confusion. Trust felt loyal. Trust also felt easier than confrontation. Especially in public. Especially on camera. Especially when pride sits nearby. Correcting a spouse inside a shared dream carries risk. It changes tone. It creates sides. Sumit feared that more than loss at first. He feared becoming another voice telling Jenny she was wrong. He feared proving critics right. Silence felt protective. Silence felt like support. Denial crept in quietly. Not denial of numbers. Denial of scale. One short day turns into another. A bad close turns into a trend. Each time he told himself it would stabilize. Each time he postponed the hard talk. Postponement feels reasonable when problems look small. Small problems grow when ignored. His role confusion ran deep. Husband wanted peace. Partner wanted equality. Manager wanted order. Son felt eyes watching. Family expectations pressed hard. Family money backed this dream. Family reputation sat on the line. Balancing those pressures froze him. Frozen leadership leaves space. Space fills fast. Sumit did not want to humiliate Jenny. He also did not want to alarm his parents. He stayed between. That middle ground cost clarity. Clarity often feels cruel before it feels kind. He delayed clarity. The business paid for delay. There were moments when he hovered near the counter longer than needed, watching exchanges, not interrupting. His body leaned forward. His mouth stayed closed. That image said everything. Awareness without action drains energy. It creates stress without relief. Family responsibility weighed heavier with each shortfall. This calf was not only theirs. Loans, support, faith, all tied together. Failing publicly would hurt more than pride. It would confirm every fear others held. That fear shaped his choices. Fear often disguises itself as patience. Sumit's silence sent mixed signals. Staff read it as permission to adapt quietly. Customers read it as flexibility. Jenny read it as approval. Silence rarely lands where intended. It travels. At home, tension followed. Not explosive. Heavy. Money sits between people even when unspoken. He carried numbers in his head. He replayed closes. He questioned whether love alone fixes systems. That question lingered. Choosing when to step in became harder with time. Early correction feels like guidance. Late correction feels like blame. He missed the easy window. After that, every move carried weight. The longer he waited, the sharper the correction would feel. This is where denial takes shape. Not denial of reality, but denial of urgency. Urgency demands action. Action demands discomfort. Discomfort threatens harmony. He chose harmony. Harmony cost money. Watching someone you love struggle invites rescue. Rescue feels caring. It also removes accountability. Sumit rescued through silence. Silence protected feelings. Silence did not protect the calf. Family pressure started closing in without words. Questions, looks, pauses. He felt it. He knew answers would not satisfy. Numbers speak louder than explanations. Explanations sound hollow when totals shrink. The longer this continued, the heavier his choice became. Loyalty to wife pulled one way, responsibility to family pulled another. Business reality pulled hardest. Denial balanced those pulls until balance broke. Denial always charges interest. It charges stress. It charges trust. It charges time. By the moment Sumit fully faced what was happening, the cost was no longer theoretical. It sat in the drawer. It sat in inventory. It sat between him and every role he tried to hold at once. The atmosphere changed the moment family attention turned toward numbers. Not feelings. Not effort. Numbers. The tone sharpened without anyone raising their voice. Questions landed heavier because they were specific. How much came in today? How much went out? Why inventory dropped faster than sales explained? Receipts were no longer paperwork. They were evidence. His father did not accuse. He examined. That distinction mattered. Examination feels colder because it removes emotion. When someone checks totals instead of intentions, there is nowhere to hide. Business math does not bend for kindness. It does not pause for adjustment periods. It reflects reality, whether reality feels fair or not. The register told a story that optimism could not rewrite. Totals did not align. Stock moved too quickly. Margins thinned without explanation. These were not abstract concerns. Family money backed this calf. Family reputation sat next to it. Every shortfall echoed beyond the counter. What made the reaction feel harsh was timing. From the outside, it looked sudden. From the inside, it had been building quietly. Family members hear things before they see them. Staff talk, neighbors talk, customers talk. When money feels loose, gossip travels fast. Not maliciously, practically. People notice patterns. His father's concern was not rooted in control for its own sake. It was rooted in protection. Protection of investment, protection of name, protection of future stability. That protection often sounds strict because it deals in limits. Limits feel personal when introduced late. Receipts came out. Inventory lists followed. The language shifted from hope to accounting. This is where emotional distance grew. When family enters a business problem, roles blur. Father becomes financier. Son becomes accountable. Wife becomes part of a system instead of just a partner. That shift hurts. Jenny faced scrutiny that felt overwhelming. Not because questions were unfair, because they arrived stacked. Language barriers, cultural differences, public pressure, all collided. Being corrected by family carries weight. Being corrected over money carries more. Being corrected on camera amplifies everything. The calf stopped being a shared dream in that moment. It became a risk to manage. That change stung. Dreams feel gentle. Risks demand control. Control does not ask how you feel first. It asks if the numbers work. Family concern came with implied judgment. Even when words stayed measured, implication filled gaps. If money is leaking, someone is responsible. Responsibility needs a name. That unspoken truth hung heavy. Nobody wanted to say it. Everyone felt it. Gossip turned into consequence because reputation moves faster than correction. Once people believe a place mishandles money, trust erodes. Suppliers tighten terms. Family tightens oversight. Freedom shrinks. What began as support turns into supervision. His father's presence changed behavior immediately. Conversations slowed. The register became tense. Every exchange felt watched. That pressure exposed fragility. Systems that rely on comfort struggle under scrutiny. Scrutiny demands consistency. Sumit stood again between worlds. This time, silence was no longer an option. Family demanded answers. Jenny felt attacked. The calf felt smaller. Choosing who leads became unavoidable. Leadership shifts always hurt someone. Control entered the room quietly but firmly, not as a takeover yet, as oversight. Oversight feels temporary until it becomes routine. Routine oversight changes power. Power changes relationships. That truth sat unsaid. The emotional weight landed hardest here. Love met limits. Trust met verification. Independence met accountability. None of those are wrong. Together, they collide. As receipts stacked and explanations thinned, one realization settled across the room. Whatever happened next would change who held control, and once control moves, it rarely returns untouched. Jenny arrived at the caf expecting another day of juggling orders and managing the register. She smiled, greeted customers, and moved through the motions. But something felt different. The register, her usual station of control, no longer required her attention. A cousin or family member stepped in quietly, handling bills, counting coins, and tallying totals with a precision that felt foreign in the familiar rhythm of her morning. Nothing had been said. No explanation, no conversation. Just a shift in reality. At first, she hesitated. Maybe it was temporary. Maybe someone was helping for a short moment while she dealt with a long line. She tried to step forward, but her hand hovered. The confidence she carried before, small but steady, wavered. The drawer that once symbolized her ability to keep the caf flowing now seemed like a spotlight showing everything that had gone wrong. That subtle tension hit deeper than any word could. The emotional impact was immediate. Humiliation is not always loud. It creeps in through small moments, through actions taken without acknowledgement or consent. Jenny had been managing chaos, juggling tasks, and trying to maintain flow, but now her role had been quietly redefined. The caf itself had not changed, but her place in it had. That realization stung more than any critique could. Watching someone else take over her responsibilities was not just inconvenient. It was a statement that someone had decided her handling of money was too risky. That decision, unspoken but unmistakable, carried a weight that was both practical and personal. Control had moved, and it had moved without her consent. That alone changes the dynamic in any relationship, in any partnership. Sumit had been silent through this. He did not announce it. He did not intervene to explain. Whether he thought it was protective or practical, the effect was the same. Silence often feels safe to those implementing change, but it leaves those affected spinning questions without answers. Jenny tried to act normal, to carry on, but the energy around the counter shifted. Staff noticed. Customers noticed. Jenny noticed. Everyone could feel that something had altered, and no one spoke its name. There was a tension between damage control and personal impact. On one hand, it was necessary. The caf was bleeding money. Free food, miscounts, and inconsistent pricing had created a gap that needed closing fast. On the other hand, the method bypassed dialogue, empathy, or acknowledgement. Actions focused on the ledger-left emotions waiting in the wings. They do not disappear. They simmer. They linger. They influence the next move. Empathy here is complicated. You can understand why money needed control without dismissing the emotional sting. Jenny had invested herself, not just financially, but emotionally, in keeping the caf running. She had tried to hold it together, to keep the rhythm flowing. Yet the act of removing her from cash handling sent a signal louder than any words. Trust in her capability had eroded. She watched quietly as her hands, once engaged, now rested idle. Every coin counted, every note verified by someone else, reminded her that the caf was no longer a shared effort in the same way. Decisions were being made above her head. Participation had limits she had not anticipated. That realization is heavy. It shapes confidence, trust, and motivation. In that moment, Jenny understood something fundamental had changed. Not the caf, not the customers, not even the rules. She understood that her role, her authority, and her influence had shifted. Control had quietly left her hands. That knowledge hit in a wave, equal parts shock, hurt, and awareness. How do you continue in a place you once led, when leadership silently moves elsewhere? Emotion ran through her quietly at first. Confusion, a need to justify herself. Anger, muted but real. And then a deeper reflection. Recognition that this shift was permanent until acknowledged openly. The caf was no longer just a business challenge. It was now an emotional test. A confrontation with pride, trust, and the limits of patience. Jenny's awareness of the shift also forced her to observe the reactions around her. Staff adjusted immediately, aligning with the new handler of cash. Customers felt the precision. The rhythm of the calf steadied, but the price was visible only to her. She realized that what looked like efficiency to others felt like exclusion to her. That moment, the exact instant she fully noticed the change, was quietly devastating. No words could mark it. No announcements. No cameras. Just her, the register, and a new dynamic she could neither control nor fully challenge. It was a silent pivot, but one that defined the next chapter of both the calf and her marriage. The realization that things had shifted without discussion, without consent, and without warning left an emotional weight that hovered over every following interaction. The tension between Jenny and Sumit grew heavier with each passing day. It was subtle at first, a longer pause when she handed over receipts, a sharper look when totals didn't match, the kind of energy that doesn't make noise but makes everything feel off. Their smiles, once easy, became measured. Movements once fluid now felt calculated. Customers sensed it. Staff sensed it. The air carried a quiet weight. Arguments appeared in small bursts, usually around the register or inventory. Not loud, not explosive, but persistent. Each miscounted rupee, each missing note, became a spark. Each spark fueled another conversation that circled blame without resolution. Every shift carried the echo of previous mistakes. The calf, meant to be a shared dream, started showing cracks in how partnership functioned under pressure. Cultural misunderstandings added layers to frustration. Jenny's unfamiliarity with certain practices created gaps in expectation. She struggled to quickly differentiate denominations. She miscounted change. She occasionally gave food away without noting it. Each act, seen in isolation, might appear small. Repeated across weeks, patterns became impossible to ignore. Sumit's frustration was visible in posture, in lingering looks, in decisions to step back or double-check. The weight of cultural adaptation became a silent but pervasive strain. Blame cycles formed naturally. Jenny noticed when totals didn't match. Staff noticed inconsistencies. Sumit noticed tension. Each observation led to defensive postures, not discussions. Each misstep became a mirror, reflecting both capability and trust. Patterns repeated. Energy drained. Motivation fluctuated. Tension became a rhythm in itself. The calf became a stage for visible stress. On-screen moments revealed quiet sighs, tightened jaws, and hurried gestures. These micro-expressions spoke volumes. Customers picked up on stiffness. Staff adjusted behaviors to avoid confrontation. Every interaction layered pressure onto what was already unstable. Publicly visible tension became a feedback loop. The more stress showed, the more it fueled itself. Emotional exhaustion was evident, not through dramatic outbursts, but through subtle signs. Slower responses, paused gestures, moments of hesitation before taking an order or counting money. Eyes that searched for clarity but did not find it. Hands that trembled slightly while tallying cash. These signs, small but persistent, revealed a deeper struggle. Each day added to the cumulative strain. Money was at the center of the calf's difficulties, but emotion began to shape perception as much as ledger lines. The stress was no longer purely financial. It was relational. Each mistake, each check, each oversight reflected questions of trust, competence, and respect. The financial loss magnified the emotional stakes, making every decision feel like a test not only of skill, but of value in the partnership. Observers could see tension rise before a task. Jenny adjusted registers slowly. Sumit lingered near deliveries longer than needed, scanning. Their movements often crossed, sometimes colliding with impatience. A single glance could convey frustration. A simple gesture could communicate disappointment. The calf's environment shifted from collaborative to cautious. Each step carried weight that was both operational and emotional. Patterns of visible stress created questions that could not be ignored. Was this disagreement about numbers, or was it about perceived competence? Was frustration rooted in mistakes, or in a struggle for authority? Were these tiny moments of hesitation evidence of care, or of fear of conflict? Publicly, the tension was plain. Privately, the answers remained elusive. Each customer interaction became a reminder of both responsibility and relational fragility. Even casual movements carried significance. The way Jenny handled a tray, the way Sumit checked inventory. Staff noticed these signals and adapted. Customers noticed subtle pauses. The cafe's rhythm, once fluid and welcoming, became punctuated by visible strain. The pressure did not scream. It whispered loudly